Hi, everyone. Chris and I are really excited to share with you all today the story of Meta.a. We shipped this brand new site faster than we even thought possible. And we want to share with you all the learnings and how you can apply some of them to your teams and projects. I'm Kathryn Middleton, and I'm a software engineer at Meta. And before Meta.a, I was on the React team, and before that, Instagram Web.
And I'm Chris. I'm a software engineer at Meta, and I've been working on messaging and chat-based assistants for 7 years now. I want to take you back to November of 2023. Before Meta.ai, the site, Meta.ai was only available on WhatsApp, Instagram, and Messenger. It's a convenient way to access a leading AI on the go, but it's hard to find Meta.ai on your desktop when you're doing productivity tasks. Many of us at the company kept bringing up this question over and over and over again, which is, what would Meta.ai look like as a website? Now, internally at Meta, we engineers have wanted to launch this type of project a number of times. But the prevailing wisdom here is that only mobile gets serious user numbers, and web typically becomes an afterthought. We struggled to convince people that a web product could be successful. However, one of the great things that I love about the culture at Meta is that it encourages engineers to explore and experiment from the ground up. I remember earlier that year, we did another exploration. It was done entirely on the side without any top-down direction. We began prototyping what a standalone Meta.ai website could look like by modifying an existing internal tool, basically removing a bunch of other features until it became a simple, standalone Meta.ai experience. We would then share that link to the experience as a way to capture people's imaginations on what this could be. When enough excitement had built around the possibilities, we decided to take a chance on developing a standalone website. Since our team at the time was mostly mobile and server engineers, we brought in Kathryn, who joins us with 10 years of web experience from React Core and Instagram Web. Now she'll share her experience and insights on how we took this idea to production.
Thanks, Chris. When I joined the team in January, the standalone site was still not yet greenlit as an official product. We didn't even have a domain yet. And since Meta is a very data-driven company, I brought a lot of data from web usage on my previous team, as well as general takeaways across the GenAI ecosystem. And we believed users also wanted to use a site for their productivity use cases, rather than go to a social app, since they serve different purposes. And as a result, we pitched the following hypothesis to leadership: that a web product could improve reach and retention among productivity users by allowing us to reach users on their preferred device, improve product discoverability, and deliver an optimized user experience on larger screens. And we could do this by handling productivity use cases like writing, coding, and leveraging the desktop interface and model capabilities for high-intent tasks. We'd also close table stake feature gaps. For example, on the apps, we lack features like thread management, rich response formatting, and longer responses. We also allow easier access by having a top-level domain through a URL. And then finally, there's also quicker experimentation that we can do on web faster than what we can do on mobile. So now that we have our formal pitch and proposal, what does this timeline and end scope look like? Chris and I met to discuss all the different components of the new site and how long each of them would take. We needed to factor in a lot of different requirements to get the site up and running with a brand new user experience, as well as the infra behind this brand new domain. Things like logged out experience, because Meta.ai right now doesn't currently work logged out. You have to be logged in on the family of apps. So how are we going to make sure that logged out experience is safe and an optimal experience? And authentication, which authentication do we want to use? And setting up Facebook login. There's also things like storage and using messenger storage with our existing infrastructure, with new threading model for our conversation history. Setting up the domain, the DNS, and infrastructure for this new site. There's also logging and measurement to make sure that we're keeping track of when we launch and how the site is doing. There's streaming responses, testing and alerts, feedback, so whether or not the prompt and the response that Meta.ai gives, we can give it a positive or negative response. There's also shared conversation history from the mobile apps to Meta.a, and making sure that if you have a thread with Messenger with Meta.a, it also exists on the Meta.a site. And then there's desktop prompt tuning, because on all the apps, the responses are very short, but on desktop, we want to have it to be longer response with a more larger interface. And then finally, also all the product feature work. So just building out all the components and making sure that the user experience is really high quality. And we scoped all of this out for 6 months with our current resourcing. And when we pitched this to leadership, we got the approval. But a week or two later, they came back to us and they asked the question, can you build Meta.ai in 1/6 of the time with unlimited resources? And 1/6 of the time was only a month. How are we able to build a brand new site from scratch with unlimited resources to get it done? And traditionally, this isn't possible. Sometimes having more people doesn't mean that it's going to get done faster. You can't have too many chefs in the kitchen, or in this case, too many engineers all building at once for the following reasons. Number one, merge conflicts. With so many engineers working on it, you're bound to get merge conflicts. The second point is just things take time, and you can't just throw resources at things like setting up the domain, DNS, certs, and infra for a brand new website. Testing and high quality. We're launching this brand new site, and we want to make sure that it's a really good first impression and a high quality site, so we'll have longer retention. And finally, communication. How do you get everyone aligned on goals, milestones, etc., without creating too much process? So I can tell you now that we managed somehow to pull this off successfully, and we're really excited to share with you all the 6 different ways that we were able to move fast so that you can apply it to your own teams and projects, both from a process and a technical standpoint. So the first way is to find the experts and get them involved ASAP from the beginning. With unlimited resources, we had the opportunity to reach out to any engineers at the company to help us ship Meta.ai. Ever heard the phrase, teach a man how to fish? Well, we were doing the exact opposite and instead hiring the fisherman to do the thing for us. And we reviewed each feature and infra we needed to build Meta.ai and reached out to each point of contact, POC, to see if they could help us. Some of the teams we reached out to were the authentication team, the web platform team, messenger storage, core infra, and so many more. We were able to entice them to join us by showcasing the value and impact of the work they'd be helping us contribute to. In our case, with the brand new domain, it provides unlimited scope and impact that has a lot of high visibility, especially with leadership buy-in. So now that we have all the experts at the company, how do we create a process so that we're able to execute efficiently? We needed to make sure that we had a solid process up front that would allow us to execute and move fast, but also keep the relevant stakeholders aware. So before everyone joined, we wanted to make sure that we had a process in place so that once they joined our project, they knew exactly what to work on and they could just quickly execute. So our whole process philosophy was to empower the engineers and trust them to do their job without feeling lost or blocked. We aimed for minimal process to make sure that everyone had focus time. We were hiring these engineers to code, not to be in meetings or writing docs or constantly giving us updates in progress. This enabled us to move really fast because we were focused on execution over process. So some of the things that we did for this process was, the first was just async team building. You can't have 50 plus engineers all meet each other in one meeting and go around the room introducing each other. That would take the whole day, maybe. So instead, we just had everyone share async quick bios of themselves and also letting them know what they're working on and their areas of expertise. We also created centralized spreadsheets to track key milestones, relevant point of contacts, XFN, and in-progress work. We also structured the code and had a big folder system and organized it in a way to avoid merge conflicts. We had a mega chat thread with all the engineers responsible, so anytime anyone was blocked or didn't know who to ask, they could ask in the chat and someone would immediately answer and help them block them. We also had an automated code review group. So anytime someone landed code, it showed up in this chat, so where other engineers were able to quickly go in and review their code. There were multiple times when there was code landed in this group and I would go see it and the code was already approved, like so fast. We also had a feedback group and people would post anytime there was a question on Meta.a, so we were continuously dogfooding it and posting feedback as we were going on. And then finally, we want to make sure that there wasn't too much process and that people just had focus time. So now that we have all the experts and the process in place, how do we actually structure everyone to be the most efficient? It wasn't really realistic for us to keep track of 100 engineers and everything they were doing. So we split up the work into work streams and organized everyone so that we were running really efficiently. These work streams were the following. We had threads and storage, plugins like search and reels, web infrastructure, authentication, components and UI, accessibility, so making sure the site is accessible to everyone, logging, making sure we have metrics in place when we launch, feedback, rich text formatting, performance, SEO, logged out, and it goes on and on. We had a lot of work streams. But every work stream had a POC and an owner that was responsible for their work streams updates, raising blockers immediately and ensuring that their own work stream was running smoothly. If any engineer had a question about another work stream, they knew which POC to reach out to. And having someone be the owner for a workstream gives them responsibility and freedom to get it done. Picking the right POC is also really important because we want them to feel really motivated and excited about the work that they're doing. They have the freedom to run their workstream any way they choose that will just enable them to move fast. So now that we have the experts, the process, and the workstreams in place to move fast, Chris is going to talk about some of the technical principles and ways that we use to ship fast.
Thanks, Kathryn. Now let's talk about the technical ways. So the fourth way we ship fast is by doing work in parallel. We did this often, but let's deep dive into one example. So setting up a brand new domain at Meta takes time. It's not commonly done and it comes with a lot of administrative process, so it takes a few weeks to complete. Instead of having all of our engineers blocked on the domain, we built the first versions on a facebook.com page only accessible to employees. Here's a screenshot of what Meta.a looked like in the early days. At this stage, we focused on building a functional prototype to figure out storage and streaming while designers worked in parallel on look and feel. Now, it's true that a lot of this code would not be reusable on the final site, but we learned a lot in the process about how things like streaming a response could proceed in stages. And we got a feel for things like latency so that when we designed the final UI interactions around them, everything felt smooth and snappy to the user. Finally, when the new domain was ready, a few of us on the core team did a hard cutover over the weekend. This itself broke some features, but it's much quicker to just do this sooner and find out everything which broke rather than try to spend another week or two trying to make the transition perfect. In total, we saved 2 weeks, which was a big factor in us launching on time, and it allowed us to move fast. Let's move on to the fifth way. That is to trade off code quality for execution speed. This is admittedly something of a balancing act, so I'll give you an example of what we did. Previously, I hinted before that this was not the first time that we built a product like this at Meta. Previously, we had developed 2 internal tools which work very similarly to the Meta.a standalone site. Now, an aspect of good engineering is code reuse, so we'll often refactor common code into shared abstractions. You may have heard the principle of dry or don't repeat yourself as an example of this. Because Meta develops on a single giant monorepo, if we wanted to, we could very easily refactor and share code with all of these existing tools. So why didn't we do that? Well, it often takes time to get right. First of all, you have to land on the right level of abstraction, which if you get this wrong, this means you either have very cumbersome code or you're in for even more refactors. Secondly, in a monorepo, if you couple your code to someone else's, any upstream changes to that shared code can now break your product, and vice versa. So it actually adds a lot of overhead. Instead, we made very liberal use of our Command-C and Command-V shortcuts. We just copy and pasted code for reuse. It doesn't result in perfect code, but it comes with a lot of benefits. We ended up with our own copy, which is resistant to upstream changes, and there's no need to worry about breaking other surfaces, which lets us iterate quicker. The sixth way is working iteratively and experimenting often. In general, you may have noticed the theme of us trying things out even if we don't know if they'll work out for sure. It's how our project got started in the first place after all. In the development of features, this means releasing features into weekly dogfooding and user research sessions, even when they feel rough around the edges. We've had features break in the middle of user research testing from changes landing the same day, and we've accumulated hundreds of bugs in feedback posts from our employees. Even though it looks very rough, working iteratively allows us to fix bugs sooner rather than waiting till the end to try to make everything perfect. This results in a higher quality product. There's one feature in particular that was extra risky for us, and it almost didn't happen. That feature would be the logged out mode. If you visit Meta.a today, you'll see a continue without login button. That's because we thought that productivity users might want the ability to try Meta.a out anonymously before logging in. Now, logged out experiences are rare at Meta because most new products tend to be tied deeply to the main social networks. In fact, the APIs that we use to interact with all of the underlying core Meta.a system all require a user identity, and we want the source of truth for conversation history to also reside on the server. Yet, at the same time, for logged out experiences, we want all of that user data to be ephemeral. So solving this gave us plenty of engineering challenges. In fact, the feature was risky and complex enough that it would have been very reasonable to cut it for time. But in the spirit of experimentation, we kept at it, and we managed to finalize the features in the final days before launch. We did end up launching with a logged out mode, and now nearly half of all of our usage comes from logged out users. If we didn't take a chance and experiment on this feature, we might never have shipped it. So, wrapping up now, these 6 ways of working helped us launch on time, but how did it turn out? Did we prove our original hypothesis? Kathryn will now share.
Now that we launched, we found that people actually use Meta.a for high productivity use cases like writing, research and image generation, and coding. So in this chart, you can see that this is Meta.a over Meta.a overall on the apps. And looking at the data after launching, we can see that visual content creation is 3 times more than Meta.a on the apps. Writing and editing is also 3 times more. Coding is 8 times more, which makes sense because you wouldn't want to be coding really on your phone, or I don't at least. And then tutoring and learning support is 2 times more. Professional and career support is 8 times more. And then summarization is 7 times more. So in particular, coding, professional usage, summarization, etc., web users tend to be more power users who send more messages and return more often. And overall, it was just really exciting to see that this data actually confirmed our original hypothesis when Chris and I were pitching the idea. So I just want to summarize the final takeaways of how you can move fast with your projects. And the first is just advocating for your idea. And when you capture an idea, get people to run with it, and you can run with it too. So Chris and I both were huge web believers, and we knew that we wanted it to be a site. So we really pushed and gathered all the data to make that happen. And then also prototype early. So prototyping allows you to bring your ideas to life. And we were able to kind of build a standalone site so that we were able to showcase what it could potentially look like. The third is investing in process. So making sure that you have enough process to make sure that a project is moving effectively, but also make sure that it's not too much process where it's not allowing you to move fast, and make sure there's a right enough balance there. The fourth point is to reuse when possible. You don't want to just start completely from scratch, and look around and see if there's different ways that you can leverage existing code and implementation for your project to allow you to move faster. The fifth is experiment often. Because we were constantly testing and dogfooding our product, we were able to launch with a high-quality site. Versus waiting until the last week to test it. And lastly, enjoy the ride. Working on Meta.ai was one of the most rewarding experiences that I've had in my career. And even though it was crazy stressful and we were moving so fast, it was almost addicting and like a roller coaster, and I just became obsessed. And so when you capture an idea and get people to run with you, you can run with it too.
Now you know everything behind the story of Meta.ai. So what's next? Well, up next, we're focusing on new features where we can show off advanced model capabilities on larger screens for power users, as well as features that let users be more productive and creative. Meta.ai is a brand new playground, and we're excited to keep exploring possibilities in this space. Thanks for listening to our talk about how we ship Meta.ai fast, and we hope you're able to bring some of these learnings to your own teams so you can also move fast.
And make sure to try out Meta.ai and let us know what you think.